Those were the exact words spoken to James Whitaker, 39, a dedicated fleet logistics manager who had spent the past 12 years optimizing deliveries for TriPoint Freight. He'd shown up that morning like every other for the past decade, coffee in hand, already mapping out reroutes due to storms on the East Coast. By the afternoon, he was sitting across from Greg Nelson, the company's operations director, who wore the nervous smile of a man hiding behind quarterly numbers. "We're implementing a new logistics AI platform," Greg explained, eyes darting to a tablet filled with colorful bar charts. "It's going to save us nearly 200,000 annually. Your position is, well, it's redundant. 12 years of dedication, wiped out by a piece of software." James didn't argue. He nodded, calm and composed, even as Greg stumbled through the rest of the script. 2 weeks severance for each year served. Train the new guy. Clean out your office. The new guy, a 24-year-old named Chase who barely knew how to spell logistics, let alone manage an entire fleet. James didn't cry, didn't plead. He packed up his things, the photo of his daughters, the handwritten notes of client, specific delivery needs, and most importantly, the thick folder filled with optimized route maps he'd spent over a decade refining. Routes the software would never understand. Routes that weren't just about GPS, but about relationships, human quirks, and real-world complexity. On his way out, he passed the dispatch office. Linda, the grizzled veteran who'd coordinated loading docks since the early 90s, gave him a tight hug. "Who am I supposed to call when everything blows up?" "Ha," she asked. "You've got the program," James replied with a wry smile. "It's supposed to be 20% more efficient." But as James walked past the boardroom and saw Greg showcasing those projected savings to the executive team, a thought settled in his gut like a stone. This isn't over. James had joined TriPoint back when it was a scrappy operation with a dozen trucks and big dreams. The founder, Walter Benton, had hired him straight out of community college. "We don't just move freight," Walter had said. "We build trust." And that trust came from knowing things software never would, that the Carlson Dairy's milk tanks would leak if left unrefrigerated too long, that Sterling mates required 400 a.m. deliveries or the butchers wouldn't prep on time, that EverGreen Produce wanted their shipments routed away from highways due to diesel contamination concerns. When Walter retired, his son Travis took over. Travis was a spreadsheet kind of guy, an MBA with big ideas and no experience. Slowly, consultants replaced coordinators. I replaced instinct. Human wisdom was labeled inefficient. James saw it all coming. His wife, Helen, warned him. "They're replacing loyalty with line items," she said over dinner. "You need a backup plan." That backup plan arrived in the form of a phone call. Doug Mercer, operations manager at Everline Logistics, TriPoint's biggest competitor, called James just 2 weeks before the axe dropped. "Heard there's some restructuring happening," Doug said. "If you ever want to talk shop." Back then, James declined. But now he was sitting in a diner with Doug, a steaming cup of black coffee in one hand, and his laptop open to a spreadsheet of late deliveries, temperature violations, and client complaints. He'd quietly tracked everything through old colleagues at TriPoint. Things were falling apart, fast. Doug didn't need convincing. "We don't want your secrets," he said. "We want your brain. Start as a consultant. Help us actually understand what these clients need." And so James began again, not in vengeance, but in purpose. He taught Everline that Carlson's delivery window wasn't negotiable, that Evergreen's organic lettuce needed alternate routes, that Sterling's dock supervisor would reject deliveries during his lunch break, regardless of what the AI said. In 3 weeks, Everline's numbers improved. In 4, TriPoint's clients started calling James directly. And then Greg from TriPoint called. "Some of our clients have been asking for you specifically," he said. James leaned back in his chair, looking out his home office window as his kids played in the yard. "I'm no longer with TriPoint. Maybe we could bring you on as a consultant," Greg offered. Very competitive rate. But James knew the real reason. The software had failed. Complaints had skyrocketed. Revenue was falling. And now, the same people who'd let him go were offering him a 2-week contract to fix what they broke. He declined. TriPoint collapsed over the next 3 months, losing major accounts to Everline. Eventually, they filed for Chapter 11. When Travis approached Everline about selling their remaining assets, it was James, now Senior Director of Logistics, who reviewed the deal. He didn't gloat. He didn't rub it in. He hired back some of the good folks who'd been let go unfairly. People like Linda. A year after his termination, James stood in Everline's operations hub. His logistics system, built on human insight, supported by tech, was running smoother than anything software alone had promised. As he looked out at the floor, screens buzzing with live data, drivers cross, checking human notes with AI recommendations, he felt something deeper than revenge. He felt vindicated. 3 months after James Whitaker had been declared redundant, the company that once deemed him obsolete was unraveling faster than a pallet of loose shrink wrap on a rainy dock. It started with the Carlson Dairy account, gone overnight after 3 late shipments and 1 disastrous delivery that left milk curdling in the sun. Sterling Meats followed soon after, citing rising spoilage claims and miscommunication at the docks. EverGreen Produce, the most sensitive of clients, was already in talks with Everline Logistics, where James had quietly been laying the foundation for something stronger than revenge resilience. James hadn't reached out to anyone. He didn't have to. They came to him. The calls started with the familiar, wary voices of logistics managers and account reps who once relied on him to solve problems before they started. The same people who now dealt with canned responses and crashed systems. And James, he listened. He made notes. He routed each call through the new system he was helping Everline build, one that didn't just process data, but preserved nuance. The human-centered approach he had always believed in. That week, over dinner with Helen, James admitted something he hadn't said out loud. I'm not just fixing things. I'm rebuilding the way it should have been done in the first place. Helen smiled, pushing his mashed potatoes around with her fork. You mean the way you did it before the suits thought software could replace soul? He chuckled. Exactly. At Everline, Doug Mercer recognized the value James brought early on. By the second month, he gave James a green light to restructure their cold chain protocols, focusing on client history and on the ground insight instead of just software predictions. By the end of that same month, James had drafted a client retention playbook paired with an internal logistics manual, both built from his years of experience. Unlike algorithms, these were rooted in reality, such as knowing Highway 84 flooded during even mild storms, or that Carlson's Monday delivery window had more to do with family tradition than logistical necessity. Doug called it the Whitaker method. By the 3rd month, James had moved from consultant to senior director of logistics, with full authority over fleet operations and client onboarding. It was around this time that Greg Nelson, the man who once let him go, showed up at Everline's front desk, looking pale and 15 pounds lighter. Can I speak to James? He asked the receptionist. James met him in a glass-walled conference room. The contrast between them was stark. Greg in a wrinkled blazer, desperation clinging to him like static, James in rolled-up sleeves, calm and grounded. TriPoint's filing for Chapter 11 next week, Greg admitted. We lost Coldstream, Murphy, Evergreen, and now Harrington Foods. That's 4 of our 5 biggest accounts. Clients keep saying the same thing. We need someone who gets it. James said nothing. We're willing to sell, Greg continued. Fleet assets, remaining routes, even the software system, if you want it. James raised an eyebrow. Why would I want a broken system that never understood what it was replacing? Greg hesitated. Some good people are still there. It's not all junk. That part was true. James took the offer to Doug and the Everline executive board. They discussed not just trucks and routes, but people. Dispatchers, drivers, coordinators. Those left behind in the chaos. Let's not buy a mistake, James said. Let's salvage the good people and rebuild something that actually works. The board agreed. Within a month, Everline finalized the acquisition. The TriPoint name was removed from the old headquarters. The blue and silver Everline emblem took its place. When James walked through those familiar halls again, this time as the one in charge, there was no pride in what had been lost. Just clarity. He met with former colleagues in the transition teams. He extended offers to 3 dispatchers, 5 drivers, and 2 ops specialists who'd fought hard to keep things together as the software failed them daily. Even Elaine, the nonsense dispatcher who once rolled her eyes at AI hype, joined Everline's control center. "You know what I missed most," she said, holding up her old notebook of driver quirks. "Having someone who actually cares what I write in this." James grinned. "I've already scanned it into the system." Not everything had changed, of course. The tech was still there, but now it was supporting people, not replacing them. Everline's new logistics hub, a hybrid model of AI, assisted scheduling with human, reviewed override options, ran smoother than anything James had imagined. And it worked because it listened, because it respected what couldn't be digitized: relationships, experience, judgment. As the first quarterly numbers rolled in, Everline's client satisfaction scores hit an all-time high. Client retention was at 98%. Coldstream's CEO even sent a handwritten note. "Feels like we're back in good hands." That afternoon, James walked the floor, coffee in hand, boots tapping on concrete. He paused by a driver reviewing special delivery notes. "All set for tomorrow, Sam?" "Yep," the man replied, avoiding the construction on 84, even though GPS says to take it. "I remember what you said. Roads don't always match reality." James smiled. "Exactly. Trust your instincts. The tech is here to help, not decide." As he headed out for the evening, James looked back at the organized hum of the dock, the living rhythm of a system built with heart and memory. They had tried to erase his value with a program. Instead, he'd proven what couldn't be automated. And this time, he didn't just survive the cut. He rewrote the system. 6 months are James. Whitaker's new life had begun at Everline. He stood in the middle of the company's newly expanded logistics hub, a state of the art space built atop lessons learned the hard way. The room buzzed with quiet efficiency. Screens showed real, time traffic overlays, live freight temperatures, and client-specific handling instructions. And in the middle of it all stood James, not just as senior logistics director, but as the architect of the human-centered model that had salvaged the company. Murphy Dairy just sent their Q2 projections. Elaine reported as she approached with a tablet in hand. 15% increase. New product line. Temperature sensitivity is higher than their usual milk runs. James didn't hesitate. "Let's assign that to Sam. Tell him to check the seal pressure on their newer tanks, and reroute past that construction on Highway 54. The vibrations were throwing off the sensors last month." Elaine nodded. "Got it." And James, the Coldstream CEO, called again. Said the last 3 runs were flawless. They're upping their contract by 20% next year. That made James smile. Coldstream had once been the crown jewel of his old employer. Now it was Everline's most loyal client. But success came with shadows. Later that day, Thomas Hayward, Everline's KO, called James into his office. "Close the door," he said, motioning to the seat across from him. "Just got off the phone with our legal team. TriPoint filed for Chapter 11 this morning." James exhaled slowly, leaning back. "I figured it was coming," he said. "They were bleeding clients for months. They've reached out." Thomas added, "Trevor Rivers is proposing an asset sale. Routes, vehicles, a few remaining facilities." James raised an eyebrow. "Wants us to bail them out, huh?" "Wants us to buy what's left before it disappears." James didn't answer right away. He remembered Trevor's arrogance, the cold efficiency of that termination meeting, and the software that was supposed to replace everything James brought to the table. But he also remembered the warehouse workers, the drivers, the dispatchers, people who had nothing to do with the bad decisions at the top. "Are we talking about the company or the people?" James finally asked. Thomas leaned forward. "Both. But you'd lead the integration." James nodded once. "Let's draft a proposal and make sure there's a path for rehiring good folks who got left behind." 3 weeks later, James stood in the newly rebranded Everline Annex, formerly TriPoint's main facility. The outdated logo had been peeled off the walls, replaced with Everline's simple, bold emblem. The place felt different, warmer. Jackson Butler, once his boss, now a quiet figure in the transition team, approached James outside the break room. "Never thought I'd work under you," Jackson said. James didn't gloat. We're not doing this to settle scores. This is about rebuilding something better. Jackson looked down. The software, it was a mistake. Trevor pushed it hard. Said it would save everything. James nodded. Tech's a tool, not a replacement for trust. Later that day, as James reviewed a driver report, a familiar name came across his screen. Frankie Delgado, one of TriPoint's longest-serving drivers. James hadn't seen him since the layoffs. Frankie's note was simple. Heard you were hiring. I'm not looking for pity. Just a place where experience still matters. James called him immediately. You still remember Murphy Dairy's load timing protocols? James asked. Like I remember my anniversary, Frankie said. Good. Let's get you back behind the wheel. That Friday, Everline's HR team reported that nearly 20 former TriPoint employees had rejoined under James's leadership. Not because they were desperate, but because word had spread Everline was different. Then came the final call. Trevor Rivers himself stood outside James's office one rainy Monday morning. You've taken everything, he said, not bitter, just hollow. Coldstream, Murphy, Greenfield. Half our staff. The soul of the operation. No, James replied calmly. You gave it away. I just reminded people what mattered. Trevor looked down, then reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded sheet. We're selling the last warehouse. The family's out. This is my final stop before stepping away. But before I go, I just wanted to say you were right. I didn't see it then. I do now. James took the sheet and nodded, not unkindly. There's always time to rebuild. Just got to start from something real. Trevor left quietly. A week later, Everline held its first Foundations of Freight training class, a program for onboarding new hires into James's relationship, first logistics model. Tommy Andrews, the former rookie, now stood at the front of the classroom, teaching others how to balance real-time data with real-world common sense. James watched from the back of the room, arms crossed, pride swelling. Morning, Mr. Whitaker. Sam called from across the dock as James made his rounds. Morning, Sam. Murphy's new dairy valves behaving. Sam grinned. Like a dream. I even wrote another poem. Want to hear it? James laughed. Later. Maybe after lunch. That evening, he packed for a trip. Yellowstone with Helen and the kids. His first real vacation in over a decade. Before leaving, he paused by his office window, watching forklifts glide in smooth synchrony across the warehouse floor. 1 year ago, a piece of paper told him he was obsolete. Today, the entire building ran on the very principles he had refused to abandon. Experience, judgment, people. He left his office with a simple note on the whiteboard. Trust your instincts. Respect the relationships. Deliver on purpose. And with that, James Whitaker stepped outside, not to walk away from logistics, but to finally enjoy the life he'd built helping others move forward. 3 weeks after I declined Rivermore's offer, the real unraveling began. I was reviewing cold chain logistics protocols at Oxwell when Elaine from Dispatch called me, her voice hushed like she was hiding in a stairwell. Frank, you won't believe this. Coldstream just pulled the plug. Entire account gone. I stood up from my desk, my heart tightening. What happened? 3 shipments ruined in 2 weeks. All arrived with temperature damage. Their CEO called Trevor himself. It got ugly. I leaned against the window, watching trucks load up in the lot below. What about Murphy and Greenfield? Murphy's complaining about late deliveries. Greenfield found diesel fumes had tainted their organic greens again. System keeps routing through the industrial bypass. She let out a dry, bitter laugh. The software's working exactly how it was designed, on paper, but it's failing in the real world. After we hung up, I stared out across the lot, watching forklifts and drivers move in sync. Every load checked, every step efficient. This was what logistics was supposed to look like. That evening, I sat across from William Coldstream at Oversteak's Grill, a steakhouse he favored when business got serious. He didn't waste time on pleasantries. Your old company's a wreck, Frank. We lost 3 loads of prime beef. That cost us more than I care to admit. I nodded. Automation has its limits. Some things you can't teach a machine. William jabbed his fork into his steak. Trevor said the software would learn, get better. But it just kept making the same damn mistakes. blamed the drivers, never once owned up to the system's flaws. He leaned forward. You knew this was coming. I suspected it, I replied, keeping my tone level. There's a difference between data and understanding. He handed me a manila folder. Your proposal. I like it. Dedicated route manager, custom scheduling protocols, real, time client input. You ready to take our business? I've already got your specs loaded into our system, I said. William smiled. Then let's get started. By the time I left that dinner, I had a signed agreement. Coldstream was officially Oxwell's newest and biggest client. 2 days later, I got a call from Lisa Murphy. Frank, it's Lisa. Heard you're with Oxwell now. We've got a mess over here. The new system at Rivermore is killing us. Delays, leaks, the whole 9 yards. Then Greenfield called. Then 2 smaller clients I hadn't spoken to in months. I never reached out first. They all came looking for me. When I brought the updates to Thomas, Oxwell's VP of Operations, he just grinned. Wes, we need to fast track your promotion. That Friday, I drove past Rivermore's headquarters. The sleek glass panels reflected the late summer sun, but the building's energy was different. Tense, overworked, desperate. I remembered Jackson telling me, the new software makes your position redundant. They had replaced me with an algorithm. Now that algorithm was costing them everything. By the end of month 3, we had signed contracts with 6 of Rivermore's clients, including their top 3, Coldstream, Murphy, and Greenfield. I was now Oxwell's Senior Director of Logistics, with an office overlooking the loading docks I'd helped reconfigure. One morning, Thomas popped in. Harrington Foods is coming our way too. Just got the call. That's their 4th biggest account, I said. Was. He corrected with a chuckle. You free for lunch. The executive team wants to lock in your permanent role. As we walked to the conference room, he added, heard Rivermore's in real trouble. Layoffs started last week, 15% already gone. I didn't smile. Not really. Those were good people. Folks like Elaine. Folks who didn't deserve to get steamrolled by someone's idea of tech-driven progress. That afternoon, Elaine herself walked into my office. They let 8 more people go, she said. I'm still there, for now. But I need something more stable? I nodded. You're not the only one. Let's talk to HR. Over the next 2 weeks, I hired 3 more former Rivermore employees. Good people who knew their work and cared about doing it right. One evening, as I walked to my truck, I found Trevor Rivermore leaning against it. He looked older than I remembered. Worn out, shoulders slumped. Came to see the operation myself, he said. Impressive. I didn't say anything. You've taken half our clients, he added, voice low. We're filing for Chapter 11 next week. I folded my arms. I didn't take anything, Trevor. Your clients left because you stopped serving them right. He looked away. 60. 3 families are losing their jobs. Doesn't that matter to you? It does. But that's on you, not me. You replaced people with software, and now you're paying for it. He hesitated. We're willing to sell. Equipment, routes, whatever's left. Maybe Oxwell wants it. I'll talk to Thomas, I said. But you're not selling us junk. There better be value there. As he walked away, my phone buzzed. A message from William Coldstream. Perfect delivery today. Like the old days, only better. I stared at that message for a long moment. There was no joy in Rivermore's collapse, just a quiet sense of consequence. Decisions have weight, especially the wrong ones. 6 months after Rivermore had replaced me with software, I stood once more in the very lobby I used to walk through every morning. But this time, the company's name wasn't etched into the wall behind reception. The familiar blue and white logo was gone. In its place, gleaming under new lights, was Oxwell Freight Systems. We had finalized the acquisition just 3 weeks earlier. The headquarters was bustling, filled with activity, teams blending from both companies, systems being restructured, training underway. But the air felt hopeful, not frantic. Purposeful, not desperate. Jackson Butler, the same man who once slid my termination letter across a desk like it was an invoice, walked up to greet me. Frank, thanks for meeting me, he said, extending a hand. His smile was faint, forced. Thomas said you'd be overseeing the transition. I am. I said, keeping my tone neutral. Want to talk in private? We headed into one of the small conference rooms off the main hallway. Jackson sat down, visibly uncomfortable. They offered me a role on the transition team. He began. I'd be reporting to you, apparently. I nodded. That's right. He exhaled slowly, rubbing his hands together. Look, after everything that happened, I didn't expect this. I mean, I was the one who... You followed orders. I interrupted. We both know Trevor made that call. You were the messenger. Jackson looked down. That software. We tried everything. Nothing worked. Not like what you built. You didn't need a new system, I said quietly. You needed to understand that logistics isn't just math. It's people. It's relationships. It's what's between the lines of code. Outside the conference room, I could hear the noise of construction crews assembling new signage, IT techs setting up new equipment, trainers briefing new employees, many of whom had once been shown the door by Rivermore. Jackson looked up. So where do I fit into all this? I slid a folder across the table. Operations coordinator. You'll work with our team to integrate what's left of Rivermore into Oxwell's client focused model. You'll help make sure the human element never gets left out again. He opened the offer letter and blinked. This is more than I made before. It's what the job's worth, I replied. Technology changes. People don't. Your experience still matters, if you're willing to learn from it. As we stepped out into the hallway, we passed Trevor Rivermore heading in the opposite direction. He didn't say a word, just nodded once, a silent admission. 1 year after being told I was obsolete, I stood in Oxwell's expanded command center, overseeing the logistics system I had helped redesign from the ground up. On the wall, digital screens displayed delivery routes, driver notes, client preferences, dock times, and temperature ranges. All things no AI ever cared to understand. Elaine approached with a tablet in hand. Murphy Dairy just sent over their next quarter's forecast. Volume's up 15%? Good, I said. Make sure James knows about their valve pressure quirks before he runs the next set of loads. I already briefed him, she said, grinning. But I love that you still check. I smiled. Force of habit. And we've all seen what happens when someone doesn't check. Next week, I'd be on vacation, my first real one in years. Catherine and I were taking the kids to Yellowstone. No laptop, no spreadsheets, just mountain air and overdue memories. As I left for the day, I passed the loading docks. One of our veteran drivers, Sam, was reviewing a printed sheet of instructions, highlighted, annotated, and designed with the kind of attention no software could replicate. All good for Coldstream tomorrow? I asked. Sam nodded. Yep. Avoiding Highway 16 like always. GPS keeps trying to reroute me, but I know better. Exactly, I said, smiling. The software's here to assist, not to think for you. As I walked to my truck, I paused and looked back at the building. I remembered that cold morning when I walked out of Rivermore with a box in my arms and 12 years in my rearview mirror. I remembered feeling disposable. Forgotten. Replaced now. I wasn't just back. I was leading. But more than that, I was proving something powerful. You can automate systems, but you can't automate wisdom. You can replace a position, but you can't replicate experience. In a world that's racing toward efficiency, it's the human touch, the intuition, the trust, the relationships that still drives everything forward. If you've ever felt pushed aside because of your age, your methods, or your values, don't let bitterness take root. Let clarity take over. What others discard as old-fashioned might just be the very thing that holds everything together when it all starts to fall apart. Have you ever felt like you were replaced too soon or underestimated because of your experience? Share your story in the comments. I'd love to hear it. And if you believe that wisdom doesn't go out of style, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next story. Because around here, we value people who've lived through it, learned from it, and still keep moving forward. Stay strong. Stay sharp. And remember, you're never too old to start proving them wrong.